All right, Lily, I'm excited.
I'm excited too. So excited for this one.
I know you're more excited than me. When we have a guest today, and when I first brought up this guest to Lily, I think I heard an inhuman squeal come out of her. She was so
I
excited.
might have squealed a little.
She was so excited, and it turned out that this woman was someone that had been essentially part of Lily's parenting style, pretty much her entire parenting life, and so we're so excited that she's here. So normally we would do all of this. Oh, what is our parenting fails? Whatever. We are successes this week because we have Lenore Skenazy on with us today.
So back in 2008, there was an article that she had written. She had a column that came out, and it was about letting her kid take the subway by herself. We're going to talk to her about that. But in 2008, my kids were 1 year old. And my ex-husband found this story and was like, this is what we need to do. Her kid took the subway. Everybody's freaking out. It's not a big deal. And so I've known about her since my kids were babies and really looked to her singular experience as a guidepost to like, should I let my kid go to the store? Should I ask my kid go to pick up milk for me? Can I let them take the train by themselves? Can I, make sure that they're getting on the city bus and off the city bus without a cell phone by themselves? She is literally the person who I would think of in those situations when I had questions about my own parenting. So I'm super, super excited to talk to her.
And I do feel like this conversation is important to any parent, especially important to single parents. Like, we need self-reliant kids. Well, let's bring her on.
I'm Lily, single mom to teen twins.
Mother! I'm recording in here.
And I'm Scott, single dad to a preteen boy.
Dad!
It's under the sink!
We're two old friends trying to navigate single parenting.
And spending the whole time thinking, I hope I don't fuck this up. Please welcome Lenore Skenazy, president of Let Grow, the nonprofit promoting childhood independence, and the author of Free Range Kids. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for identifying me also with Free Range Kids. So today I was dealing with the trademark office. I accidentally let the trademark protection for Free Range Kids, which I got long ago, slip. And so now I have to prove it. And they wrote me back saying no. And then they gave me all these references to Free Range Kids in the media. And it's like, everybody uses that phrase. I'm like, but it's mine.
Of me.
Like, do you notice anyone they're talking about when they say that phrase? So now I have to like gather all the information and prove that I started it.
Well, if they need any witnesses, we are happy to come.
There we go. Right.
Yeah.
Do you mind going down to DC? Is that too much to ask?
No,
I am
not
on your
really.
podcast. Right.
It seems fair.
You have been doing this for a while.
Tell that.
Yeah.
Tell them.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Bureaucrat.
And it's interesting because I think you've seen change and not change. So 2008, right? The column that you wrote. Would you mind telling us or telling our audience about the column?
Sure. I wrote a column called Why I Let My 9-Year-Old Ride the Subway Alone, because I had let my 9-year-old ride the subway alone here in New York City where we live after he had been asking me and my husband for weeks or months, can you please take me someplace I haven't been? Let me find my own way home. It was his dearest desire. And one day I did it. And then he got home, obviously, and I didn't write a column about it immediately because it did strike me as a big deal. But a couple months later, when I had nothing to do, nothing to say, actually, and a deadline looming, and I think you guys have been in the media long enough to know what that means. I'll write about anything. So I said, should I write about, is he taking the subway by himself? And my editor said, oh, sure. And so I wrote it. And then 2 days later, I was on the Today Show, MSNBC, Fox News, and NPR. And I got the nickname America's Worst Mom.
Ooh.
And I started a blog that weekend and I called it Free Range Kids. And then about, 7 years ago, Jonathan Haidt, everybody loves Jonathan, including me, who wrote The Anxious Generation, and Daniel Schuckman, who used to be the chairman of FIRE, which fights for free speech on campus, were both worried about kids on campus, first of all, falling apart and feeling fragile, but secondly, mistaking feeling uncomfortable with, new ideas, new people, new thoughts, new political parties.
Yeah.
But they were mistaking feeling uncomfortable for literally being unsafe. And Dan and John said, anything we do with college kids is a late stage intervention. What if we try to aim to create kids who are more, robust and resilient, open-minded, eager to engage with new and sometimes, I guess, unfamiliar and maybe even a little bit scary circumstances or ideas. And so John had read Free Range Kids, and so he came to me and said, let's start Let Grow. And I said, okay, but we had to add one more person, and the other person that we added as a founder was Peter Gray, who I highly recommend for your podcast, who wrote the book Free to Learn. And he's a psychology professor at Boston College who has spent his whole life studying the importance of kids together of all different ages just playing and making their own fun, and all the important child development, and I'd say human development, that goes on when kids don't have somebody organizing their play dates and soccer games.
It's funny, I have an only child, and he's 11, and so I have tried to send him out. Like, I'm a big believer in what you're talking about, and we used to get sent out to play. Why are our kids not sent out to play? And thankfully, I live in a somewhat of a neighborhood, so it's not quite as hard to do. And yet what I've come up against is he goes out to play and nobody else is there. There's nobody, and he'll knock on a door and they'll be, we have a lesson. He has his friends in the neighborhood. And the things that are in his way, it's overscheduling. It's, honestly, there's some issues where, like, he's an 11-year-old boy and he has some friends that are like 9-year-old girls and he wants to play with them and their parents aren't always comfortable with that. And there's just, and over and over, it's like, we have our fears.
Sad. Oh
I know,
God.
especially because my son is like he is the poster child for playing well with others. But it's like, it's not even our fear that we're up against. It's the fear of our community. And like, how do you overcome that?
Thank you for teeing that up for me. First of all, I've been doing the same thing for 16 years, but I still write down ideas on my hand as I was walking to the park today. And one of them that somebody had said this to me the other day, which is go outside, not online. And I thought that's an interesting way to frame it, because if we had everybody going back outside, your son would immediately find some other kids at the park or ready to come outside because their parents were like, yeah, go outside. And the other thing, which isn't quite on point for this question, is assume competence.
Yes.
A lot of times parents think like, well, I can't let her cross the street. How would she learn that? I'm like, I don't know. Did you ever learn how to cross the street? Were you 32?
Yeah.
So weirdly, I just got an email this morning from a conference that's going to be happening in Argentina about childhood mobility, specifically in urban settings. And they did a survey and they found that it is not fear of crime, and it is not thinking that their kids are too young as the reason, at least the Argentinian parents aren't sending their kids to the store or to the park. It's because they literally think their kids can't do it.
Yeah.
Like, they'll be lost, they'll be confused, they'll be sad, they'll be lonely, they'll get it wrong, they'll get hurt, they'll fall behind. I'm not with them to teach them every second. And so what I'd written on my hand is a phrase that I've heard from the autism world, which is assume competence. Just because somebody can't communicate or can't do something, I mean, that's in the autism world or sometimes the disability world, but it's the same thing with youth. It's just assume that, they can. Maybe they can't right this second. Maybe they need a little experience or practice or encouragement, but to always assume that, like, I better do that for my kid. I mean, there's the line, there's the drop-off line at the morning at schools, and sometimes the parents are running around and opening the door for the kids who are in the back. And like, you just got to assume that they're more competent than that. They're at least as competent as you.
For sure. And
at their age.
How do you expect them ever to learn? This is a thing that I've always done with my kids. I mean, I had twins, which complicates parenting infinitely right from the jump. But part of the thing that happened because of that is I had to let them be on their own because there was only one of me and there was two of them. So what I did, my son was the much more adventurous baby, and he would climb on anything. And my daughter was happy to like lag behind. And so I knew that I couldn't constantly be there to protect him. So we just taught him, like, this is how you climb. And like, gradual stages. But I remember being at playgrounds with the two of them, and they were 2 or 3 years old. And he would go running up to climb the high thing. And I knew he was fine to do it. But the amount of parent reaction that I got from like, oh, watch the baby. When he's 2 or 3, he's a toddler at a playground. This is what you're supposed to be doing.
That's why they have playgrounds.
Yeah. It's really shocking.
Why'd they put that thing with all the pipes up there?
I know. Well, the
kids are going to climb on it. All right. So back to your actual question, which was your kid goes outside. There's nobody to play with. Of course, they make a hairpin turn and come right back in. And then there's somebody to play with online or, anything to do other than playing outside. So So when we founded Let Grow, I said, I've been a thought leader for a long time.
Yes.
Right? And I'm sick of it. Leading thoughts doesn't help because I can lead them so far. Oh, yes, I remember my childhood. It was so great. We played outside till the streetlights came home. But if I let my kid do that, what if something bad happened? If that happened, I could never forgive myself. I'd have to kill myself. And that would be the end. No. So thoughts keep going in circles. And the circle that it goes in these days is I can't let my kid do anything by themselves because if something bad happened, I would never forgive myself. It's just a phrase that keeps coming up. And so what changes people is not thinking, it's doing. And one of our phrases is action breaks the cycle. So how do you get parents used to sending their kids outside when they've never sent their kids outside?
Yeah.
You have to push them to do it before they're ready and gently push. And you have to push collectively because John Haidt always says a collective problem needs a collective solution. So if a school assigns what we call the Let Grow experience, which is free, all our materials are free, it's a homework assignment that they give the kids that says, go home and do something new on your own without your parents, with your parents' permission, but without them. And then we have a giant list of things. And of course, it doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of all the things they could do. They could, climb a tree, kill a bird. That's not on the list. It's only because
I'm glad that's not on the list.
It's because you have birds behind you. Never mind. Climb a tree, run an errand, make a cake, put the cake in the oven and take it out using mitts, of course. And, do something new that you feel ready to do. And it's only after the kid does that, and either they went to the store and they got the stick of butter, the carton of milk, and a loaf of bread.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It's either after
that.
right. So they've either done it successfully, or they totally, they hope they don't F it up, but they forgot to get the change, or they got, the chocolate milk or soy milk, or any of the milks that I didn't grow up with that I disdain. Oats, almonds, nothing. I like milk. But anyway, so say they come home and they got lost on the way. Either way, you are so excited that they did something on their own. And if they screwed it up, that's great in another way because it's like, look, it wasn't the end of the world.
Yeah.
You got lost. It was scary for a bit. And then you asked somebody and now you're back home. So no matter what, when a kid does something on their own, it's the only way to rewire a parent because they are so proud to see that their kid did something on their own that now I've taken to asking, and I will ask both of you, to tell me a time that you were most proud of your kid or kids. Like, tell me a time that, like, your heart was just bursting. Like, look at my kid.
Only one?
Just asking that question, Lenore, I just started getting choked up just thinking of it. So I'm sorry. I'm in an emotional phase of my life right now.
I see.
But I think it's exactly what you're describing. I am always most proud of my kids when they do something I cannot imagine doing myself. And that's true in both of them. So,
that's true. Yeah, that's a neat one. Yeah.
My son is a musician and he writes his own music and he performs it. And he's never been afraid to get up there and just let something of his own creation in front of public be out there in the world. And I remember being that age and embarrassed and shy, but his kind of confidence of saying I'm going to take this step and do this thing that I want to do is the most inspiring thing in the world. And my daughter had a very similar thing this summer. They're teenagers, so they're taking the subway obviously for a long time. We started out on the buses in middle school. They went on the bus by themselves, but this summer she got invited to do a writing class at NYU, and she didn't know what she was doing and she didn't know where she was going. And she's a nervous kid by nature. So we were like, well, you're going to have to figure it out. Here, we'll go look at the maps and figure out the building. And then you'll figure out how to get there and you'll be fine. You've got your phone, you'll figure it out. And she was so excited, at the end of those few weeks, to have done this thing and be a part of the world that, she
be
really,
part of the world.
Yeah, she is on her own, but it's in a very safe, it's a familiar environment, like a repeated, travels on a daily basis. But this was something wildly new for her. And that is exactly the kind of thing that I came away from super, super proud of her of, that we didn't fix it in any way. A building got changed one day. She had to figure out the classroom, where to get to. And this is just life. She's a very competent kid. And I know she could do it. But her own confidence in that was what made me so excited.
Yours are so big and mine is so small.
I
Well, no, my son made breakfast. He made breakfast.
That's great.
And he made a bacon and egg sandwich. And so he had to make the scrambled eggs. He had to microwave. We microwave the bacon for that, so that
your microwave is going to smell like bacon for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
which is not a problem.
No problem. I know.
That is
so
not
delicious.
a problem.
Yes, I know.
But the only thing I was worried about, we have a gas stove, so I was worried it was going to burn down the house. But so I was right around the corner, kind of peeking, but not walking in. So I kind of cheated, I guess. But he made the whole thing, and he was so proud of it. And as a single parent, I was also selfishly happy. And then this is something they can do. Because I think that's what I've been noticing with him. When you're, as a single parent, you need something that maybe as, if you've got two parents, you don't need as much. Like you need that autonomy even more.
In your kid, yeah, for sure.
In your kid, because you don't have the time to do it. Like I have my first gig every twice a week. I have something at 7:30 a.m. He's got to get himself off to school because I'm working. And so it's like the pride in knowing that he can do it, but also I have a necessity that a lot of the community of his friends' parents don't have. So I've been forced to make him be more self-reliant, because otherwise I would go crazy. And I think that's the bit that I would love to be able to communicate to these other parents. It's just like, you will feel better. It's not just that your kids will feel better. You will feel better. You will have more time. You'll have more faith. This is good for you to give them this foundation of self-reliance. And that, I think, has been interesting, because they hear it, but then the fear, you just see the fear behind their eyes. But what if, but what if, but what if,
I will say I'm an anxious person, like clinically anxious person by nature. And so for me.
No, you stop it, Lily. No,
I just mask
I'd never believe it.
I mask it incredibly well. And I feel like, the thing that has happened, like everything that we've mentioned makes sense. And it seems like such baby steps that we would be proud of our kids for doing things on our own as, grown adults. But I think that as a generation, we were the feral kids who were left in the backyards, and for good and for ill. Like good things happen, bad things happen, but we figured it out. We mostly lived. And the thing that is so weird to me now is that generation, we wild children, are now the ones who are so remarkably anxious and oversaturated with, media telling us all these scary things that might happen or could happen. And I'm really interested in some of the stats that you had on your Let Grow site talking about actual crime stats, actual
crime stats.
I know. Can I give you my favorite stat? By the way, we were looking through them. This stat I love, so I'm going to tell you.
It's probably the only one I have memorized, but go on.
Oh, I'm sure it is. It's so well put that I'm positive this is the one. It was the one that Warwick, I don't know how to say his last name.
Yeah, Warwick Cairns,
Cairns, from How to Live Dangerously, where he says, if for some strange reason you wanted your child to be kidnapped by a stranger, how long would you have to keep them outside, unattended, for this to be statistically likely to happen? 750,000 years. I mean, such a stark number. I mean, it really brought to light when I read that. It was just, that your fear is unfounded. You see some of these other statistics. That was such a great way to put that statistic.
I love that statistic, right. And as I like to point out, after the first 100,000 years, they're not a child anymore.
Right. And yet, what I think is interesting about this, and I was just, my girlfriend is off buying lottery tickets right now. So she is buying 30 lottery tickets because she has 29 friends, and they all buy a lottery ticket, $2 each. And then they pool them all. And if any of those lottery tickets wins, they'll split it. Statistically, they have just as much chance of winning if they all pooled 5 cents and bought one lottery ticket. Why are they buying 30? Because emotionally, it feels like they have a better chance
Very
of winning.
Likely,
even though statistically it doesn't. So
I think statistically they do.
No,
I'd say
it is so
statistically they have
infinitesimal.
30 times more. Instead of it being 0.0000001, it's 0.00003.
I think that's what we call a statistical insignificant.
That is, there actually is a phrase. It's called de minimis, right?
Yeah,
right.
But right. I mean, but it speaks to probably one of the big issues here, which is we have these statistics, but but they don't emotionally feel true.
Right. Which is why the Let Grow experience is so key. because if your mind is thinking, well, it could be okay, but, what if they get kidnapped? Well, it's not likely they'll get kidnapped, but what if they do? You still won't let your kid do something, which is why you need the push. So if you have, I just got a note from my friend in Chicago, my best friend in Chicago. Her niece's family is doing the Let Grow experience because shout out to Deerfield, Illinois. All the schools there are doing it. And the mom wrote that the kid just made breakfast and now he's planning to make a dinner, like, I guess, during Christmas break. And it's the same thing. It's like, even you said it, and you said it jokingly, but it's so interesting. You said, I worried he could burn down the house. I hear that from kids a lot. Like they want to bake cookies, but they don't want to burn down the house. They want to make scrambled eggs, but they don't want to burn down the house. And at first, when the Let Grow project began years ago, we used to call it the project. I thought it was kids sort of being dramatic saying that. And then I realized, no, they're saying it all around the country, and they think that there's a chance. And I don't even think they're thinking statistically. They just think that there's a chance that fire equals burnt house.
Right.
Just like walk outside equals white van never seen again. And the only thing that rewires both generations is reality. Reality is more mundane and more cheerful and sometimes more boring. I'd say often more boring than being, kidnapped and thrown in a trunk or burning down your house. And
I'm okay
we
with
only
boring.
have boring is like regular life. And, the mind works like Google. So if you ask it, is there a good taco stand near me? Up come 30 choices, ranked or whatever, because I live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of taco stands. True. And then, but if you ask them, is my kid safe at the bus stop? And up comes Eitan Pates from 1979, boy taken from a bus stop, literally 45 years ago, I guess. And then, or up comes J.C. Dugard, also taken from a bus stop. But that's two kids over the course of basically 50 years and about over 300 million people born between then and now. And so it's really too bad, because once you ask a question and you get the results in your brain, which are just the stories that have been told a million times and that were very salient and emotional because they have it's a tragedy, and you've seen the video and you've heard the story over and over again, and in television and podcasts and whatever, books often. So you can't really ask your brain a question about safety and expect to get something that is truly helpful. In general, when it's about an everyday childhood activity. And also, one of the things you said, Lily, interested me. You said, like, we were wild children, and it's like you only seem wild in retrospect. You were like normal children.
Yeah, we were just
so
Yeah.
Right. So why do we say wild? I mean, I don't think I was particularly wild, but I rode my bike and I went to the library by myself, and I, wandered through the woods without people. So we really sort of rewrite our expectations by framing the olden days as, benign neglect. It wasn't neglect, right? It was trust.
Yeah.
So we really have to flip it. And the only way you flip it is through the actual experience of letting go.
Well, there's an interesting thing I was just thinking about thinking about talking to you, where my mother, who is greatest generation bordering on boomer, she always says to us these days, oh, you kids are all so independent, and I made you that way, but I wish you weren't now. So like, there's an interesting thing that happens that when I'm thinking about that is like, oh, what she's asking for is connection. She did make us very independent, and she was a single mom, after I was 7 or 8 years old too. So it's necessary additionally for her. But because we are so independent, I think she's longing for that connection now. And I was wondering if some of what parents are doing now, because they're fearful and they have all these different idea of what a parent-child relationship looks like, is like not letting go because of that emotional connection. And this would be, beyond like the purview of what you're doing here. But I was wondering if you had any thoughts about like what parent-child dynamic has done to have the effect that it's had on, creating independent kids.
That's a lot of different questions. But I think we all want to have a great relationship with our kids. And I don't think it depends on whether you spend 1 hour a day with them or 7.5 hours a day with them. I think it depends on who your kid is, who you are, and all the relationships change over the years too.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it was because your mom let you have independence that she's mad that you don't call her more often. I mean, you
Probably true.
that's you. That's on
That's
you.
you not calling.
Right.
All right, fair enough, fair enough.
But one of the things is that this is something that I'm just starting to talk about, and it's really amorphous at this point. But I think one of the things that's been undermined in our generation, and actually way younger than me generation, is that we've been sort of told that the parent-child relationship is tenuous. And that you must reinforce it with texts during the day and with a little note in the lunch, and you better be at the bus stop to wave goodbye or they'll feel bereft. And it's like, I don't know. I remember when my kids were growing up, there were nannies whose kids were back in Jamaica who felt extremely close to those kids and couldn't wait till they moved here at age 14 or whatever. And then they continued their family in person. But those are the two extremes, but the studies show that parents are spending way more time with their kids today than they did a generation ago. And a lot of the times actually as car drivers, really. And that, I think that's one of the unspoken reasons that the Surgeon General's report on, parents are going crazy today. And he talks about, a need for cheaper daycare, which I agree with, and time off and this and that and healthcare and whatever. But really, what we also need is time off from our kids. And if the expectations are that, here's my husband, home safely, right? Yay. Not kidnapped by, right. Good job, good buddy. Right, you didn't take the candy. Right, look, I'm giving free Medicare from a white van. Don't take it. Really, I've got some, right, Prilosec. No, right. Anyway, the point being that there's demands on our time that are excessive and boring, and they don't make us necessarily closer to our kids, but they do make us further from happiness, right?
That's an interesting, because I was thinking about that when we talk about tech, because some of the issues with some of the things around, like why I let my son play games online and things like that, a lot of that's for me. It's not for him. It's so that I can get some time. It's just him and me. I'm a full-time single dad, so I have him 98% of the time. And so when I need a break, the best time, he's an only child. He has nobody else to play with. All the kids are inside refusing to come out to play. Sometimes the only thing he can do is call up a friend and play Roblox over the phone. And I know there's a lot fraught with that, and I'd rather he be outside playing.
Right.
But the other option is he's outside playing with me. And, and I don't have the mental capacity to be his constant playmate. I will
right, or the
drool
time
over
or
myself.
the interest. Yeah, that's
any
fair.
of that. So
right.
I know, I know you have a lot of, a lot of your platform is get away from the tech and get outside, which makes a lot of sense. But how do you balance that? How do you feel we should balance that?
My platform isn't get away from tech. John Haidt's platform is get away from tech. Let Grow is focused on independence and free play, and I'd say responsibility. So we're sort of tech neutral. But in that event, you still want your kids to have somebody to play with and a chance to develop all those social emotional skills you get from, organizing a game of soccer or whatever, Foursquare. So in addition to the Let Grow experience where kids get the homework assignment, go do something by yourself so that the parents get used to letting go, we also recommend that schools do the Let Grow Play Club. And that is simply having time before or after school as much as possible, hour before school, a couple hours after school, or less if you can't do all that, where the school stays open for mixed age, no devices, free play. And there's an adult there because of liability issues, really, but they're in the corner. They're looking through their phone. They're whatever. They've got an EpiPen, right, and maybe a cigarette. One is for the kid, one is not. And they are not organizing the games. They're not solving the arguments. When kids come and say, like, I was supposed to go and he said the ball was in, you say, is this a kid problem or an adult problem? Well, it's a kid problem. It's like, okay, well then I bet you could solve it because I'm an adult. So it just works so beautifully. And it's a way of giving your kid, Scott, what I hear you longing for, which is a chance to just be playing with other kids after school, without it being a big hoo-ha, without the uniforms, without the AstroTurf, without the trophies, just playing. And so it's just a way to recreate a bit of what we grew up with, which was time with kids with nothing riding on it and no scores, no nothing, just kids. And we recommend that the schools allow for loose parts, which are just everything from, the traditional, ball and a hula hoop, as well as a suitcase and, cardboard boxes. So it's just sort of like in the neighborhood where you found something and like, hey, let's do this. And it really, I've watched videos and I've been to places doing this, and it is beyond fantastic and heartening. And I just wish everybody would go see these. You just see the kids going, all right, you're going to do this and then I'll do this. And what are they doing? They're taking turns punching a piece of cardboard. One mom told me that she stood back, her kids were playing and she wasn't going to get involved. What are we going to do? We're bored. And she said, you guys figure it out. And they were over on a part of the playground where there were slats of wood. And in between the slats were growing up little pieces of grass, right? Poking out. And they were pretending to be lice, sucking at the root of the hair. Like, this is so delicious.
Oh, man.
But that's not a game I would have come up with.
No,
right?
No, thank God. We don't need more than one person coming up with that game. One
right, but
in
it's
the world
kids.
is fine.
I mean, that's the kids.
I know.
They're
It's so
figuring
true.
out what to do, right? And they're so creative. And if we would have said, no, it's soccer time, there's no creativity there.
For sure. And it's something that, without having done the studies myself or just parenting by instinct, one of the things that I've always really advocated for in my own kids is boredom. Because I think that there's so much play, there's so much creativity that can only happen when you have unscheduled time, that there isn't a way to do that if you're going.
There is. That's why the Let Grow Play Club is scheduled time for unstructured free play. And when it's in middle school, it's not always play. It can be just hanging around and talking to your friends. But it is a place, it is a sanctuary without phones with a lot of other kids. I mean, so you got a time, you got a place, and you have other kids. Those are the three magic ingredients. Yeah. And if you have no phones, it's even better because then everybody is relating to each other and not someplace else, even though they're physically together.
Do you feel there's a way to do that, more of a community? I guess right now, because right now school is community because it's probably easiest for you to figure that out.
It's good because everybody is there. But yes, we've heard from many a parent who has started what they, whether they call it a Let Grow Play Club or not, it doesn't really matter. But they texted other parents in the neighborhood or they put little notes in the mailboxes and said, look, on Friday afternoons, I'm going to be outside sitting on the stoop or sitting on the lawn or watching from my window because it's freezing and I don't want to be outside. And if your kids want to come over, that's great. Or, they can go to the park or my kid's going to be at the park and maybe your kids will join them there. And we've heard it working. It's so easy. And so John likes the idea of free play Fridays because it's easy to remember. It's alliterative and it's the gate to the weekend, right?
For sure.
So if they play together on Friday.
And you don't have the homework because I think the homework bit is always
homework
tough.
and organized activities. Why do kids play so much when they're at campsites? When you're at an RV site and it's like you're surrounded by strangers who have vans, right? And yet now you're letting your kids play outside. You don't know them, right? Everybody's drinking and there's fire. Right? Yeah.
We used to, on Fridays, it was a natural evolution of gathering our kids together, but we used to have this thing called toddler pizza where it was just that, after school, after work, we'd pick a house. It was from toddlers and onward, but all the kids would just get together. We'd order a bunch of pizzas. The parents would sit together in the dining room or wherever, have wine with our pizza and bitch about everything. And then they would all ruin whatever home we were in together. And it was, I think it's tapping into exactly what you're recommending. And it was a relief for everybody.
I love that idea because they're already doing it because we have this green area that people go to and they go out there to meet and stuff. But I do love the idea of communicating that the hump is, all right, well, what if nobody's there and my kid's alone and that makes me nervous? Or what if this, all the little things. I love the idea of communicating. This is here. Use it or not, but it's here.
Right. They say that we should do this.
What I miss is we share a driveway with my neighboring house. And during the pandemic, there was a kid his age in that house. And they would just run back and forth all day long. And it was
so great.
It got us through the pandemic and it was the best. And they're still great friends and stuff. But I miss that because that was just knock, knock, knock. Oh, look, here's Cole ready to play. And that to me is like, that's how it was when I was a kid. It was knock, knock, ready to play. And, how do we
Betsy
just
come
make,
out? Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's gotten weird in that it feels odd to say, can Betsy come out and play? Whereas that should be the most natural question to ask in the world. And so that's what
Especially if they're named Betsy. Right.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
But I have one last question because we're, I think, getting to the end of it. We don't want to use up your whole day. So, your column was back in, your first 2008, I think. It's now 2000, well, this will be 2025 when this comes out. I mean, do you feel that it's getting better? It's getting worse?
Oh,
Like,
that's
how do you
interesting.
feel it's changed? Because you've been watching it this whole time.
Yeah, I have been watching a long time. Couple things. Worse is that phones allow us to track our kids, and because we can, it now requires opting out in a way to say, no, I trust my kid even without watching them from afar. And so I think that adds this new level of vigilance that wasn't happening in 2008. I think the iPhone came out in like 2010 or 2011. So on the other hand, nobody was talking about this very much back then. And I think it has hit like a pretty fever pitch recently that people are recognizing that independence is not meh when it comes to kids and child development, that it is something significant. And of course, you don't want to celebrate, yay, the mental health issue is so enormous, but it is an enormous concern. And there's a recognition now that when you take out all the independence, all the accomplishment, all the confidence, all the conflict, all the, slight risks and the exhilaration of doing things by yourself, with your friends, without an adult always helping, take that out of kids' lives. And it shouldn't surprise anybody that the kids are drooping, right? They just don't have the chance, the nutrients of, wow, that was hard, but I did it, or that was scary and fun, or let's try that again. And so kids are drooping, as the Surgeon General noted, and parents are drooping, as the Surgeon General noted. And it's like, maybe there's a reason, right? And maybe we all need a little more space for our own worlds, like you were talking about, Lily, even with the toddler pizza. And once you say that it's not bad parenting and it's not wasting our kids' potential, the time that we're not with them, helping, assisting, and teaching, then a Yale study just proved it. When parents start to realize that letting kids do things on their own is education. We think education is only when they're sitting in a chair or when we're reading to them, but education is doing anything, right? Even, drawing or playing or climbing. And so once parents realize that, then they actually intervene half as much. That's what the Yale study found. Wow. Half as much. So I think that people are recognizing that independence is important. Now when they realize it's not just important, it's educational, I think we're going to soar. Well, why don't we leave it with that? Because I think that's a great way to end the conversation. But it's such a delight having you on, and I'm so glad I know all about you now. Really nice. Now you're stalking me.
But thank you. This was such a great conversation, and we really appreciate having you on. So listen, get the Westport schools or any other schools in Brooklyn to do the Let Grow experience. Yeah. It's free. All the materials for setting up a Let Grow Play Club, also free. You just have to have somebody staff it. And then you can really start flipping around your kids' childhood and your own time. Absolutely.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave a like or a crazy comment. We'd love to hear from you, and see you again soon.